That was weird. That was compared to what I normally do. I'll take it. We try to get creative here on the Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything balls every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to that regularly, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. And when you get there, rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our show when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now. It is Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and that is when we live stream on YouTube this show. And if you go over to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube page, you can subscribe and turn on that notification bell. And then when we go live, you can tune in and you can be a part of the show. You can very literally comment, come hang out, be a part of the show, give us your thoughts. But you got to go subscribe, and then you can find us there at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports.com, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach and I write on the old internets. We're going to start off today's show a little bit of a somber note. Obviously, we will get into all of the Tennessee news of the last week. Unfortunately, most of it has to do with basketball, and that didn't go so hot, but we'll discuss all of that. But first, we got to talk about the passing of a true Tennessee legend. Gus Manning, at the age of 99, passed away, I believe, yesterday, Sunday, the February 12th. I'll just kind of read. If you don't know Gus Manning, I mean, he's one of the stalwart figures of all time in Tennessee athletics. I'll just read what Tennessee put out today because I thought it was a great summation of just sort of who he was as a person. He was kind of a jack of all trades. They said, Tennessee athletics lost the last remaining administrative link with direct ties to General Robert Neyland, as the beloved Charles A. Manning, also known as Gus, passed away on Sunday in his hometown of Knoxville. He was 99 years old. Manning retired in 2000 after close to 50 years of full-time service to UT. He maintained an office at Thompson Bowling Arena until 2017 and held the title of consultant athletics director until his passing. He served for 8 ADs, 11 head football coaches during his career at Tennessee. The impact Manning made on the evolution of Tennessee athletics internal operations, much of which was done behind the scenes and away from the spotlight, was no less significant than the contributions of iconic names such as Neyland, Doherty, Cronin, Dickey, and Pat Summitt. This is terribly sad. Obviously, he lived a very full life at 99 years old. And Zach, you and I both have met Gus. We were in UT media, both of us, for a while. And, I've sat beside him at press conferences, and he was, I even texted you this today, absolute royalty. Like when he came into a room with UT media, everybody shook his hand. Everybody knew who he was, and he always had a reserved seat. It's in the press box in Neyland, they had like the Gus Manning seat. It was an amazing career that he had.
Yeah, for sure. There's like a sense of reverence, like when you saw him in the press box or wandering around. I wasn't like some of the media members, obviously deeply entrenched that go back decades and have these close relationships with him. But I was telling you in a text earlier, I remember riding, several elevator ride trips with him, making small talk, and just the connection that he had to the past. It was like something that you could feel, all these changes that have happened at Tennessee over the decades, especially the last, 10, 20 years. He was that one connection, to decades and decades and decades ago to Neyland all the way through. And it's kind of like a comforting thing, I guess, in a way, just knowing that history, that you had that connection to the past. So, yeah, it is really obviously sad that he's gone and full life, of course, but that's always sad and just such an iconic figure in Tennessee history.
Icon is really the right word. So just salute to Gus Manning. RIP to him. Thoughts and prayers to his family. But man, what a life lived. An incredible guy with an incredible legacy. So just wanted to start off
stories. Lots of stories that went with him for sure.
I can't imagine. It said it in that article that I just read. The last administrative link directly to General Neyland. I mean, he worked with Robert Neyland. Like that's absolutely wild and just incredible. But just had to mention that up top before we get into all of the stuff, such as this. Obviously, when we get into the show, this is a sponsored show that we do for money. I didn't want it to be in poor taste where we load you up with sponsors on the front end and then talk about Gus Manning. So now we're going to get into the actual the show and the flow of everything here. And before we do that, I got to tell you about all the sponsors of the show. And huge news: we got 2 new sponsors last week. We have another sponsor this week, and really, it's the gang's all back together because these were our sponsors from the football season. But I'll read them all out now. Superbook Sports. There's no better place to wager on the big game. This one. I need to update this one. I'll just put it this way. There's no better place to wager on sports than Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com and download the app today. Superbook Sports. Then Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey back for more. Love these guys from Log Still Distillery. Make your own luck like Tennessee football's fast-paced Rattle and Snap offense with Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey Omaha Steaks. You can get $30 off your order of perfectly aged steaks, juicy burgers, and decadent desserts with our promo code VOLS. That is VOLS. That's Omaha Steaks. And finally, Farm Bureau Health Plans for better coverage, better rates, and better service. Go to fbhb.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. A little bit more on all of those a little later in the show, but thank you to all of them for supporting the boys here. We appreciate it. Now, on to Tennessee news and notes. That was a doozy of a week, wasn't it, Zach? And Tennessee sports. The basketball team goes out and they lose at Vandy. And, Tennessee had won 11 straight against Vandy. They were kind of due, I guess. Vandy played a really great game. Salute to them. They did it. Tennessee gave them a wide open shot, and we actually did a whole segment about it on, I guess it was Thursday of last week. So we fleshed that out. If you want to listen to that, go back and on A to Z Sports video catalog there. You can find us talking about it. But then on Saturday, they play Missouri, who's not a bad team. It's not good. I was telling you before we came on here, basically you look at their schedule, they've gotten plastered by most of the good teams they've played. They really haven't given many of those teams, much of a run. And Tennessee gets down by 17 in this game, makes a miracle comeback, and for the second straight game in a row, loses on an absolutely brutal, essentially half-court shot. It was past half-court, but close enough. It's probably the most brutal week of Tennessee basketball that I can remember in a really, really long time. One doesn't come straight to mind, at least. What did you think, Zach?
It's like reliving the 2017 Florida game all over again, especially that Missouri game, because, they were down in that game, came back, had the lead, and it's last second pass to lose the game. That's what that Missouri game felt like. You battle your way back, and you feel like the game's in control. Just like the Vanderbilt game, you feel like, okay, they're going to pull this out. It's going to be okay. They got this. You can kind of tell when a team has it wrapped up. And it felt like it was heading that direction. And, when Vescovi missed the second free throw, I was like, there's no way this is going to happen again. I told you, I was like, I didn't even think they would get a shot off, because you see that so much in college basketball. Everything has to go just right, getting the ball up the floor, actually getting a shot off. And it's unfortunate. If Vescovi would have made that free throw, Tennessee could have just fouled, and they wouldn't have had a chance to even tie the game. They would have went to the line, shot a couple of free throws, and Tennessee could have ran the clock out pretty much at that point. So obviously the missed free throw was was going to get all the attention, but Tennessee really never should have been in that position to begin with, right? Like they should have never been down in the first half like that to Missouri. But they were, and they battled their way back. So there's positives there to take from it. And, that one shot kind of erases that, which is unfortunate, because if that shot claims off the rim and they miss it, well, everything that happened up until that point is still true. The incredible comeback, the second half surge, getting back in that game and kind of taking control of it, all that still happened. Like, you can't erase all of that just because that desperation shot went in. It's kind of crazy that you hedge your emotions on that one shot, but that's how it goes. Ultimately, it only matters if you won or lost. But I do think there were some positives in that second half to take away. It's just hard to see those when there's a loss in the loss column there.
I think the toughest thing walking away from that one is that if Tennessee would have just won, it's the perfect teachable moment because you got your butt absolutely kicked up and down the court for like 80% of that game. And then that 20% where in like 10 minutes, I guess maybe that'd be 25%. Basically in a quarter of the game, Tennessee came out and looked like a whole different team altogether. I mean, it was really wild, honestly, to the point where I'll put it this way. I didn't know they had that in them. I didn't think that this team, when they got down by 17 points, I tweeted out, I was like something to the effect of, so are we still going to call this everybody calm down? It's just a midseason game, or can we talk about the reality of this team? I said something along those lines because this team is not built to come back from 17 points down. They're just not. They can't score the basketball. You could see it there. They were down by 17 points. And then all of a sudden, specifically Tyreek Key just exploded. Had an absolutely huge game. And you look at the way they played with fire. They played with all of this excitement. The crowd really got into it. And it was extremely exciting. And you watched what happened. They got, a 5-6 point lead at one point, back from being 17 down. And you just went, oh my gosh, here it is. They're back. The team is back. How they were playing with total desperation. And that's, frankly, that's what they have to find within themselves. And that was going to be sort of my talking point if Tennessee ended up winning. They have to find that desperation within themselves because now, for an indeterminate amount of time, maybe back on Wednesday, maybe out for longer, Josiah Jordan-James is out, and now Julian Phillips is out. Julian Phillips had a hip flexor, I think they called it, and was out for the entire second half of that game. He was out for that entire comeback. And so the bottom line is this: they didn't win, and so it just makes that loss really gross. You played some of your best basketball in the entire season to make that comeback, and you saw that it's there. And so a teachable moment goes into just a really gross loss, which is still a teachable moment, but just hurts a lot more. And so if you want to put a silver lining on it, maybe this is the motivation they need to get desperate. Number one, Alabama is coming in on Wednesday. Maybe this is what they needed to just fight and claw and be that team that in that 10-minute stretch made that 17-point comeback. Because if they do that, it's Final 14. If they play like they did in that first half, where they're, over pursuing on threes and letting a decent, not great team run all over them, they're going to lose to Alabama by 30. Alabama's an excellent basketball team. They're a little dependent on one guy, but that one guy's amazing at basketball. So hopefully this is the catalyst. I'll say that.
I know there's two things I wanted to ask you about this game and about, kind of moving forward. They go hand in hand. One, if Josiah Jordan-James plays, they probably beat Missouri, right? But
probably
how comforting is that though? Because you don't know when he's coming back. You don't know how long he's going to be out. So you can't say, you might have to go the rest of the season without him. And in that same vein, like the defense the past two games, especially against Missouri, giving up, 86 points. And even against Vanderbilt at times, they shot pretty well against Tennessee. Do you feel like the defense has slipped a little bit these last couple of weeks? Is it we kind of talked about this a little bit last week, is it the wear and tear of a long season and playing so physical? How do those two things, Josiah Jordan-James being out and the defense the last couple of games, how do you feel about that moving forward? How's it impact your view of what's possible the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think what you really saw in that game was that Josiah Jordan-James brings a defensive element that cannot be replicated on the rest of that roster. He is more lengthy and more athletic than the guys behind him. And I say that like basically Phillips plays behind him, and I think Phillips actually has a higher ceiling, but he's just not there yet. I think his motivation is not there. I don't want to say he plays lazy, but he's not. His talents aren't being maximized at the moment. And so you take that at what it is. And so, I saw some people, the calm down, it's just a midseason game crowd. they were very much like, oh, this is just a freak shooting night for Missouri. No, it's not. I mean, they made some shots that were freak stuff. Absolutely. I guess I could say it this way. If they don't make freak shots, they probably lose. But freak shots were not the sole reason you were down by 17. If that makes sense. Like, yes, they made some shots with a hand directly in their face, and Tennessee probably couldn't have been playing better defense than they were.
You're going to have those, though.
Exactly. That's going to happen. It's going to happen against Alabama. Lord, they're an excellent shooting team, so expect that against Alabama. But some, like, that was only a portion. They made 14 threes. They didn't make 14 freak threes. Like, that's not what happened in that game. As I said, over pursuing on shots. They don't have the same length without Josiah Jordan-James to defend the perimeter. I also think just the game plan in general was off in that first half, at least. Like, they just didn't come in with the right anything in that one, and then they got blown off the floor through, essentially 25 minutes of that game. And I don't know where you start because there is a lot to it. Multiple people after that game asked me, like, do you think this is Barnes' fault? And my answer to that is, like, I have for years now. Go back and listen on this podcast if you feel the need. But I have for years now essentially disagreed with the overarching way that Rick strategizes games. I don't like the way that he runs offense. We've talked about it. It's kind of a 1990s, like the game has passed you by sort of offense. And defensively, obviously, I love that. But can you depend on it all the time when a team is having a hot shooting night? No. Clearly, the past two games, you haven't been able to do that. And so it's sort of yes and no, because in a lot of instances on Tennessee's offense against not great teams, like against Vandy and Missouri, you were getting open shots and just bricking them, or you were getting layups and not making them. I mean, Olivier Kamwa has these great games where you really see the talent, and then he just is nowhere. He's nothing. He's not even a factor. And sometimes he's so much not a factor that he's a legitimate liability. And I like somebody in the comments here said, the distinguished gentleman said, Key will never shoot that good in his life. It feels that way. He had that miracle game, but the way things have gone with this team, how are we supposed to believe that he's going to replicate that going forward? Because they haven't done that all season. A guy will have a great game, and the very next game they disappear. And that's for multiple dudes across this roster. So there's just a lot to it. So I kind of go, it's the coach and it's the players. It's both.
That's what I was about to say. How do you answer this question here from Pat Rose? Is it me, or has this team not looked well coached?
I don't know that they look poorly coached necessarily. They're pretty good fundamentally. They play sound defense. They play especially sound defense when Josiah Jordan-James is on the floor.
It's just like their bad moments have come in really critical moments where it's just so glaringly obvious. Like, it's basketball. You're going to have turnovers and mistakes and defensive lapses, but theirs have come at times when it's just like, it's like that holding call in the Super Bowl Sunday night. Like, that happens in the middle of a game. You don't think that much of it, but it alters the outcome of the game, which is what these mistakes by Tennessee have done. And it kind of makes you think that maybe they're poorly coached, but you're not getting a ton of that throughout a game.
No. And to the points that people made, like, oh, Tobe Awaka cost you that game. Tobe Awaka had a great game in that one. Yeah, it was a lane violation that for some reason I even got confused and tweeted about it. The people on TV said it was a foul, and I was like, a foul? Where do you ever see a foul called in that scenario? And then after the fact, we found out it was just a lane violation. It was a lane violation when you watch the replay. It was, but Tobe Awaka is not the reason that you were down by 17 at one point in that game. Because the main point is that you never should have been down by that much. If you don't go down by that much, you win that game by 15, and just walk away. But yeah, and Vescovi too. If you go, oh well, Vescovi should have just made the free throw, then it wouldn't have mattered. And blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's one of the main reasons that you were in that spot. He was part of that big run, and was one of the sparks along with Tyreek Key. So like Ashton says it here, you're just missing a real leader of a player. They don't have that alpha dog. They just don't. And so that's to prescribe some things here. What Tennessee has to do to get back on track. They have it in there. Do they have it enough to suddenly become a Final Four caliber team on a consistent basis? I'm not sure. But do they have enough to close out this season with more than one win? I mean, the one bona fide win remaining on the schedule is South Carolina. You have to play Texas A&M. You have to play at Auburn. You have to play at Kentucky. You have to play Alabama. Those, I mean, as of this moment, those are all losses in my mind outside of the South Carolina game, unless they find something. And that something is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, desperation. That something is just going all out, trying to find solutions, trying to find a guy who will step up and be, maybe grab guys by the collar. But is that guy Josiah Jordan-James, and he's sitting on the bench with an injury? I'm not sure.
Yeah, to me, that's the biggest concern is Josiah Jordan-James and how long he's going to be out and when he comes back. Because I don't know if you can make that Final Four run without him in the lineup. I don't think that's going to happen.
That'd be tough.
But if he's there, if he plays, I still think it's all there in front of Tennessee. Like we've seen them, the stretch against Missouri where they got back in the game against Texas. Like we've seen them look like a Final Four team at times this year. Like we know that they have that in them. Maybe this does get them, kind of like Kentucky there briefly right before they played Tennessee. We talked about how, okay, Kentucky could be dangerous this weekend because they're kind of at rock bottom right now. And Tennessee's not like at rock bottom. I mean, they're still ranked number 10 in the country. It's not like this, they're floundering and you got to go fire Rick Barnes or anything like that. Like, I don't think anybody realistically wants that to happen. Anybody in their right mind. That's just kind of silly, but it's all still there in front of them. Everything they want to accomplish is still there. They can still be, some of these games, they could still be a 2 seed. I think a 1 seed is probably out of the picture at this point, but they could still be 2 seed, 3 seed. I mean, everything is there for them to make this run. If they go beat Alabama Wednesday night, I think the whole tone around this team flips. I think everybody's right back to being excited. Everybody's right back, okay, this is the team that Barnes can really make a run with. I think you can erase all the doubt if you beat Alabama Wednesday night. I mean, it's got to be considered the biggest game of the year because you're really, it's your not last real chance, but it's your best chance to prove that you're an elite team the rest of the season until you get into the tournament, the SEC tournament.
I mean, we say the team needs to get desperate. Barnes needs to get desperate. Like he has to be thinking that this is not good.
He felt like to me that he sounded a little different after the game against Missouri. Like he was a little more like
that's a back-breaking loss.
Trying to comfort fans, the team, perhaps in a way. Kind of saying basically, I've repeated a lot of what he said. That it's all still there in front of them. I think he was trying to calm everything down a little bit. It was just a little different than his normal demeanor.
Well, on that note, I want to talk about two things in this conversation with basketball. One being the Alabama game. We'll kind of give our quick thoughts on that. But then the main basketball account tweeted essentially an apology after that game, and we'll talk about that. But before we do, I got to tell you about our first great sponsor, and that is Superbook Sports. Make 2023 the year that you beat Vegas. Superbook Sports gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no guys across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, Superbook features some of the best odds, boosts, and promo bets that you will find anywhere. So download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com right now and start your battle against Vegas. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. That is Superbook Sports. Now, with this tweet that Tennessee basketball had, let me find it. I didn't have it up in front of me. But this was they didn't directly apologize. I'm trying to think of exactly how to characterize what they said. Here it is right here. This is what they said. We know it's been a weird couple weeks. They shouldn't have put this in there. They said sports really do be like that sometimes. It's like apologetic up front, and and then sports do be like that sometimes. But last night's second half effort, that was Tennessee basketball. And the second half TBA atmosphere, that was what Vol Nation is all about. So stick with us, keep showing up, and we will meet you there. I like this and I don't. I think it's unnecessary. Like, it just, like, we all get that it was really painful, but it is an olive branch to the fans, and I think it's good because there has been criticism of Barnes of just like he kind of puffs his chests out and it's my way or the highway, and if you don't like it, go on and get out, and that's sort of just like general demeanor, especially like the way that he talks about his players after games. And so that's probably good. It's probably fine. I guess I'm ambivalent about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think it's nice to kind of talk to the fan base. I think more programs should do that because that's obviously, that's who's supporting you and paying a lot of the bills is the paying fans. At the same time, I think it just opens you up to so much criticism from other fan bases. And I haven't been on Twitter a ton since Saturday night, just with the Super Bowl going on and a lot of stuff. So I don't really know how the reaction to that tweet was from opposing fan bases, but I feel like it's just giving opposing fan bases ammo, and they love that when it comes to Tennessee. So I feel like you open yourself up to some unnecessary criticism there, but at the same time, I do appreciate the message to the fans, like because it's two tough losses, and I feel like something needs to be said there, and I don't know. I'm the same way. I don't love it. I probably wish they wouldn't have done it, but I respect it. I understand where they're coming from. I just think it just lends you to be the punchline to so many jokes from other fan bases.
Yeah, it's fine, but I could have done without, I guess. But largely, like, I think my point with that would be, I just hope behind the scenes, specifically with Barnes, there is an actual attitude change.
There's gotta be some urgency, right?
Exactly. It's exactly that. It's not that I think that they've had like a crappy attitude or anything. They've been trying, but urgency is the right word. I hope there is a switch to true urgency. To, we got to go out there and lay it out in every single game, and it starts with this Alabama game because, as you said, the whole narrative can flip if you win this Alabama game. And I'll respond to this before we talk about that game. Ben said, I don't understand how you can loudly claim regular season success doesn't matter. The league is the best it's ever been. No, it's not. It's not. It's a little bit better than it was last year. But I don't know. The league is the best it's ever been, and then get mad Tennessee lost 2 games where it showed heart and lost. I don't think that, especially in that Vandy game, I mean, you got outworked. I don't know how else you classify that. Now, in the second half of that Missouri game, you did show heart, and you did show what this team can be when they really, as you just said, show urgency. Sure, but I don't think that I'm saying that regular season games don't matter, but it is all about the postseason at the end of the day, and the regular season tells you what you might get in the postseason, and you have to.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like the Florida loss didn't really bother me that much because it's a road loss, and those do happen to really good teams. Like Alabama losing to Oklahoma. There are games in the regular season that you will lose that are just not great losses. You just have a bad night. Like, those things happen. If they go lose to Alabama by 2 points, it's not like that's not a huge deal. You're right there in the game. You make a shot or two, and maybe the outcome's different. It's losing the teams that you shouldn't lose to, consistently. It's losing the Florida game and then rebounding, the next week with the loss to Vanderbilt, a team that, that game should never been close. Lost to Missouri. Can understand that one being a little closer, but, it still is at home. It's still a game that you should win by double digits. And when that starts piling up, I think that's where the concern creeps in because of what you said. It's indicative of what might happen in the postseason, and then you got these issues that are glaring. It's like, okay, if those issues aren't fixed by March, it's going to be another early exit.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it there. The regular season, it matters in that it gets you to the postseason. You can win league championships, and that's fun, but it is really all about that postseason. But you learn who you are in the regular season. And at this point, when you're getting to the last portion of the regular season and you're playing like Tennessee is right now, getting blown off the floor in the first half against a not amazing team, and then, and losing to Vandy. I mean, even the loss to Vandy played well. It was on the road. The whole vibe of that whole thing was off. But and then even in wins, you're playing badly, like in the Auburn game.
Oh,
You just
yeah,
look
forgot
at
about
that. Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and at a minimum, you have to say, we got to figure something out because the tournament's about to start. And you're talking at this point, if Tennessee loses out except for the South Carolina game, you probably wouldn't fall to being a play-in team, but you'll be a 6 seed. That's not good. That's not, and I mean, that's how your tournament path becomes really tough. Is when you have to play those seeds that are closer to you, the better seeds where you're not a 2 playing a 15. Things just become exponentially tougher in that way. So I'm not sure, but it all starts with this Alabama game. We can finish with this as far as this goes. We're going to talk about baseball. We're going to talk about Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, give our quick thoughts on that and a few other things. But this Alabama game, they have Brandon Miller. That's all you really got to know. Do you think Tennessee can win this game, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Alabama, struggle. Like you said, if Brandon Miller's not on a particular night, it significantly changes the way the game's played. I think Tennessee, like that tweet that we referenced, that that isn't, like they said, that's not who this team totally is. Like, obviously they have that in them, they have these lapses in them, but they're still, their body of work suggests that they are that team that was ranked in the top 5. They are the team that beat Texas. They are the team that, won however many games in a row before losing to Florida. So I think, yeah, it's definitely there. Nothing's changed. Not having Josiah Jordan-James concerns me for sure. I think that's a huge piece, and I don't know for sure that he's not going to play, but it would kind of be a surprise to me if he did. I think that's really the biggest concern. But I don't know. To me, I'm just more like intrigued of, okay, what do we see? Do we see Barnes coaching different? Do we see different rotations? Do we see different guys getting different, minutes? I'm more interested in, it's weird to say, I'm almost more interested to see the approach than the final outcome, because I just think that'll tell us a lot about Tennessee moving forward, and if there are adjustments being made, or if they're just going to try to stick with what they did against Vanderbilt and Missouri and keep doing it until it either works or doesn't.
Potentially not having Josiah Jordan-James and Julian Phillips in this one is probably the thing that scares me the most. That's pretty, I mean, that's who most feasibly would be guarding Brandon Miller in this one, specifically Josiah. At least personally, that's who I would probably put on him. I think just athletically, that's who could probably keep up with him the best. That's scary. That's a scary proposition. I think you have to win in different ways this time. And I'm interested to see what Barnes does, the approach that they take. I'm with you. Can they win? Yes. Will they win? As of right now, I'm going to say no. I think they'll probably lose this game. Alabama is playing excellent basketball. I watched a lot of that Auburn game, and they just big boyed Auburn. And that was really the long and the short of it. They trailed for a pretty good chunk of that one, but at the end of the game, when it came to crunch time, when the rubber met the road, they just pulled away and just kind of kept them at arm's length. And they're very, very good. But if you can eliminate Brandon Miller out of that game, it's there for you. It's absolutely there for you. And with Tennessee's defense, that could absolutely happen. But who, again, going back, if Josiah and Julian Phillips are out, who is playing defense there?
I mean, Oklahoma stopped him, and they don't have anybody. They're not. That game, I mean, kind of the recipe to beating them, I guess. They shot, 29% in that game in Oklahoma from 3, and Oklahoma shot almost 70%. Like, it's pretty easy to win, by 20 points whenever your opponent's shooting that terribly, and Oklahoma shot that well. Is that what Tennessee has to do to win this game? If that's the case, yeah, that's concerning, because you can't count on this Tennessee team to shoot that well. You can't even count on them to shoot as well as they did against Missouri. I mean, they shot really well against Missouri and still lost the game. And they haven't been doing that very consistently. Like, they've had some terrible shooting nights. So if it comes down to that, if it's like a to borrow a football term, if it's like a shootout and you're having to score 80, 90 points to win, I don't know. Like I don't like that.
Nah, this isn't a Josh Heupel football team. You're not winning a shootout. Eric, I mean, he adds to it right here. He said rebounding is a major issue. Absolutely. Hopefully, Toby Awaka gets more playing time, and Ben actually right above that says you've already seen Barnes give Awaka a lot of minutes because of his size and aggression. Hopefully, that continues. Even though he made that mistake at the end of that game, I hope Barnes doesn't like take that personally and sit him on the bench the whole time because he's probably the best big man you have at the moment. But Eric also said guards not taking the shot and drawing fouls when they're taking it to the basket. Instead, they kick it out to the boundary and they shoot and miss contested threes. Absolutely. That kind of goes to my point of like, I sort of disagree with Barnes' overarching offensive philosophy. I don't think his offense is very exciting. You look at what Nate Oates does. I think he's like, to me in this scenario, like Nate Oates is a little bit of a Josh Heupel in terms of college basketball. Like he really is doing things and taking a fresh young man's approach to the game, if that's what you want to call it. And so we'll see. Can Barnes do it?
They did get to the free throw line quite a bit more against Missouri. I mean, if they can continue that and then the defense picks up like it was, I mean, I feel like there are, like you said, there are positives that came out of that Missouri game. It's just, that final shot makes you feel about the game a lot differently than you would otherwise. But if they can continue getting to the line like that and actually making free throws for the majority of them, that changes things quite a bit, I think.
We shall see. That'll be Wednesday night. Maybe we'll do a show on Thursday talking about it. Might do one if they win. We can maybe do kind of a assessment from a win over Alabama. That could actually be kind of interesting.
What did you think about Zakai at the end of that game? I know Ron Slay had some thoughts about that on the SEC network after.
Zakai's hurt the team in the last few games. I don't know another way to say it. When Tennessee has been on hot streaks or really played well, he's an absolute X factor. I mean, he's one of the best dudes out on the floor, and he's been one of the worst dudes out on the floor. And I don't know how else you slice that. He just has been. And so, yeah, I mean, to that same point of what we were saying, like Tennessee has the pieces to get back on track. He's part of that for sure. You have to get back to having great play out as a Zakai. And I don't even mean like making threes or anything like that. I don't think he really needs to do that, but more just not turning the ball over, facilitating better, slashing to the basket more effectively, and honestly, slashing to the basket and not trying to force things up because he just gets blocked. It happened to him in that Missouri game. So yeah, we'll see what they do. I think that can also come down to Barnes and in terms of how he wants to use Zakai in those games, but we'll see what happens. We do have to move on. We're going to talk about the announcement that came over the last week since we last did this show. Texas and Oklahoma are going to be officially in the SEC for the 2024-25 season, and there's some interesting implications that come along with that. But before we get into that, I got to tell you about the newest sponsor of this show, the great folks at Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. We are deep in a winter right now. And I'll tell you, folks, there's really nothing better to go along with a chilly winter night here in the great state of Tennessee than Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. Log Still Distillery has released a new Tennessee whiskey line, Rattle and Snap, named after a long-forgotten game of chance. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those that make their own luck. There is a 4-year and an 8-year version of Rattle and Snap whiskey. I've had both of them. I have both of them in this house. Here is the 8-year right here. Speak of the devil. It's a beautiful bottle and really beautiful whiskey in this bottle. You can find Rattle and Snap across stores in Tennessee, and Rattle and Snap is also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. So run, do not walk to get some Rattle and Snap whiskey for these cold winter nights, and follow Rattle and Snap on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. They do have us commissioned for a Rattle and Snap Tennessee Stat of the Week. And we thought that we would stop here and take another quick second before we talk about Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC and mention Gus Manning once again. Some of the insane stats about this guy's time at Tennessee. Here it is from Tennessee's official release, and I'll just read a couple of paragraphs here. Manning was hospitalized in 2017 The 2017 football home opener against Indiana State on September 9th ended Manning's streak of consecutive games attended at 455. That was the last game that he was ever able to see in person. And Manning attended an incredible 608 consecutive Tennessee football games, home, away, and neutral site, until an accident en route to see the Vols play Kentucky in November of 2003 caused him to return to Knoxville and miss that game. That's absolutely crazy. And just, we already talked about at the beginning of the show his crazy legacies, but 608 straight games, home, away, and neutral, is just crazy. But that's your rattle and snap Tennessee stat of the week there. And another shout out to the legend, Gus Manning.
I got a little nervous there watching you trying to put that bottle back on the shelf.
I know.
While still doing the ad read. That was impressive.
I thought, so I have a movable table here that all my stuff is on, and I think it's moved forward a little bit, because normally I can just reach back and it's like pretty close, but it's like almost full arm's length away now. And so I was having to stretch. It was a balancing act. I'm glad I pulled it off.
You pulled it off, yeah.
Glad I pulled it off. But do get yourself some Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey. It really is awesome. I highly suggest it. All righty. Texas, Oklahoma officially coming into the league in 2024. This was a long time coming. And I think the part that people are interested in is this. It's going to shake up the divisions. And the talk, I mean, I read an actual article. I don't remember exactly where I saw it from, but it was about the realignment of the conference when they come in. So we'll essentially probably shave off the division format. That will likely be gone. And then they'll go into this sort of pod format. That's the name that's been given to it some, but it's basically 9 conference games and 3 permanent opponents for everybody in the league, and then rotating for all the rest for the 6 remaining games. And the projection that I've seen most frequently, and this would just be karmic justice, would it not? It would be Tennessee getting Alabama, naturally. You still got to play Alabama every year. But then Vanderbilt and Kentucky as its 3 permanent opponents. Your thoughts on that, Zach, when you hear that format?
Yeah, I think people are getting pretty excited about the idea of having, Alabama, obviously going to be a tough game every year, but then Kentucky and Vanderbilt, 2 games you're probably going to win most years. It's like, oh yeah, this is what we've been waiting for. Get Georgia and Florida off the schedule every single year. All these tough games, because Tennessee really has had one of the tougher, setups in college football, along with Auburn, who has to play Georgia in their crossover game and out of the SEC West. I think what some people aren't realizing is that you're going to play every team basically twice in 4 years. You're going to have a home and home with every single team in the SEC. So chances are you're going to be playing Alabama, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and then Georgia. And then the next year, Florida. And then the next year, Georgia again. So, and then LSU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, different premier programs are going to be mixed in there as well. So I don't think it's that the schedule's necessarily getting easier. Plus, you're adding another conference game, and there aren't that many Vanderbilts and Kentuckys and Mississippi State or whoever in the SEC that you can count on beating. So there's still going to be some tough games. There's going to be years when the schedule sets up pretty tough. Like those years when you got to play Georgia, and then maybe it ends up being LSU, who seems to be picking up under Brian Kelly down there. And that can make for a pretty tough year, basically be a very similar schedule to what you had this season. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, Tennessee has an easy road all of a sudden. I do think it pretty much with the expanded playoff, I think your goal every year has to be 10 regular season wins. You get 2 losses, and I think that gets you in the expanded playoff most years, as long as the SEC stays being, kind of the premier conference, which these things do go in cycles. It's possible that eventually that flips a little bit. I don't foresee it anytime soon, but it wasn't that long ago, 2004, that an undefeated SEC team in Auburn didn't even play in the BCS championship game. So it can flip. It goes through cycles. I like the setup better because it's kind of weird when you don't play LSU for 7, 8 years, or Arkansas, or a lot of those SEC West teams that you don't see that often. I miss seeing a lot of those games like we used to before Texas A&M and Missouri joined the SEC back in 2012. So I think it's a better setup, but I don't think it really makes Tennessee's. I think the expanded playoff will have much more of an impact on Tennessee's postseason chances than this schedule change.
I agree with that. Your schedule is going to be tough no matter what. It's SEC football. That's the way it is. Nobody, even the teams that don't have to play Alabama and Georgia every year like Tennessee does, they have a tough time too. Now, something that I am very hopeful that this will do is get rid of some of these stupid permanent non-conference games, such
Yes.
as Georgia and Georgia Tech. Are you kidding me? They should have gotten rid of that a millennium ago.
That's the one that was boring. It hasn't been I don't.
Ugh.
I'm sure somebody could tell me I'm wrong, that maybe Georgia Tech's played them close. I don't know when the last time Georgia Tech beat them was. I'm sure it was, sometime in their Mark Richt years. I'm sure it happened. But that game there's no excitement for that game outside of the Georgia fan base. I'm sure Georgia Tech fans probably hate it too, because they just get the crap beat out of them every single year. But that game, is it like South Carolina Clemson? I know a lot of people really love that game, but for the most part, it's aside from this year, Clemson kind of dominates that. I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. Some of those, I don't like the permanent non-conference rivalries at all.
The last time Georgia Tech won, it was actually. This is. Am I thinking correctly? This would have been against Kirby Smart. 28-27 in 2016. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, that was his first season. I think he lost to Vanderbilt that year.
Yeah. And then they won 2 years before that, 2014. They were really good in 2014, though. I think they played in the Orange Bowl that year.
Georgia Tech back then was kind of, they were in that triple option. Obviously, Tennessee played them in 2017 and won the game in overtime. But that was one of the more frustrating games I've ever watched, because Tennessee had 2 possessions in the first half.
So I was at that game. I was in the press box. Oh, that was rough. But hey, you won. That was fun. But yeah, I hope that goes away. Clemson, South Carolina. I'm sure Clemson wants to keep that one around, but I don't think South Carolina would probably be all right taking that one away. And then just some of the other ones that are like that, like Florida State.
Kentucky, Louisville, do they play?
Kentucky, Louisville, that one can go. Some of those, just like Kentucky, Louisville, great basketball. You got to keep it in basketball. But football, I mean, come on.
I'd rather see Georgia playing a USC or something like that. Somebody different every single year. And that's not just Georgia. I like those games for everybody, just some of these different Power 5 opponents. Tennessee playing Virginia, to open the season. That's a unique game that we haven't really seen. I would prefer more of that. And because you're locked into these permanent non-conference games, it doesn't allow you to do that.
Well, hopefully it does align the way that people are saying for Tennessee, because I mean, it is going to be tough every year, but just to have Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Alabama be your 3, if we're going to have to play Alabama, eventually Saban's going to retire, and then you have Kentucky and Vanderbilt left. And so you're always locked into that one. And then maybe some years it'll set up like Georgia next year, where it's just a total cupcake year, and you can maybe just sort of walk into the playoffs. Wouldn't that be nice after all these years having to play?
If this was going into effect in 2023, obviously the Alabama game would be really tough, especially being in Tuscaloosa. But if it fell on a year where you didn't have Georgia, you're playing a Florida team that's kind of reeling right now, and you're not really sure the future of that program. Nobody else in the SEC West outside of LSU, who you just played last year, so you probably wouldn't play them again. Nobody else over there really scares you that much.
No.
Even Texas and Oklahoma coming in, they're not nearly as strong as they have been in the past, especially Oklahoma. So there are years it can set up nicely. I just don't think it'll be that often that you get that.
I do think for basketball, it'll probably stay largely the same, I would guess. Essentially, because the divisions are gone.
Yeah, they're already not playing home and homes.
Yeah, team. I don't think that will change that much outside of just adding more teams. But for football, I welcome it. I think it'll be good. Texas and Oklahoma, I think they're funny schools, because I feel like they, from the outside, they're like, yeah, we belong in the SEC and we're blah, 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 blah. And like, until this year, Oklahoma could probably make a case. I mean, Lord knows they're a far better SEC team than like Missouri. As far as I'm concerned, you kicked them out of the league. But, you know, but I'm I'm excited for them to get in here and to kind of learn how it goes. Because I want to see like Texas fans in that first season, if they go and they like only win 5 games. And then they, are you beating your chest now? How you feeling after you really get in here and you bleed? Because everybody just is from outside looking in. Everybody's like, the SEC, they think they're really special, and they're well, you come in here and see how it really goes. See how you hold up. I mean, that there's reason that we were just over the moon about going 11-2. If Tennessee played in the American Athletic Conference, your feeling about 11-2 would probably be different. So, anywho, any other thoughts on that? But unless you have any, we can move on to a much more positive subject in Tennessee baseball.
Yeah, let's hit the positivity.
we do really need to, don't we? But we're going to talk about Tennessee baseball opening their season against Arizona this week. And man, I am so excited to see what they do. But before we get deep into that, we got to tell you about our next great sponsor, Omaha Steaks. I thought this was funny. This was their ad this week. It starts this way: "Hail to the Chief of Steaks." Enjoy presidential savings on Omaha Steaks favorites, including tender steaks, ocean fresh seafood, air chilled chicken, and more during their President's Day sale. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, at checkout, and you'll get $30 off your order. That's $30 off an endless variety of delicious gourmet foods, from perfectly aged steaks to juicy burgers, decadent desserts, and classic comfort meals. Every bite is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit omahasteaks.com and enter VOLS at checkout and take advantage of this exclusive offer. There is a reason why Omaha Steaks has been the leader of gourmet steaks and food since 1917. No one, and I mean no one, comes close to matching the flavor, tenderness, and value of Omaha Steaks. I can attest to this. I have gotten it sent directly to my front door, and it comes in this awesome package. You basically get like a free cooler, which is nice with it, that the steaks come in. And it just could not be easier. Some of the best quality meat that you can get out there comes right to your door. I mean, what more could you want? Visit omahasteaks.com, use promo code VOLS at checkout, and get an extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. That is Omaha Steaks, promo code VOLS. And this is where our segment for Omaha Steaks comes in. That is the Omaha Steaks Who's Cooking segment. And who's cooking? Hopefully, will be Tennessee baseball. And that's why I wanted to lead in with Omaha Steaks here. Tennessee baseball, I mean, we haven't talked about it much leading up just because the season hasn't happened yet, and it's just been kind of preseason practices and things like that. Nothing of real note has occurred yet. But the things of note that have occurred are this. Tennessee's 3 starting weekend pitchers, all 3 of them, are All-Americans. Preseason, first team All-Americans. All 3 of them. And then they also have South Halverson. And then they also have an additional All-American in Maliahuna, who I think he was second team, and he'll be a fielder for Tennessee. But you got an MLB pitching staff with this team. You lost a bunch of your offense and a decent amount of your fielding, but also got a bunch in the transfer portal coming in on top of Maliahuna. He came from Kansas. But you have guys in addition to that. And I don't want to come in with these kind of expectations, but you're preseason number 2. And it's pretty exciting, Zach. Is this the team that's going to finally win that national title for Vol baseball?
Nah, we'll see. I don't like making those types of predictions with baseball because it's so dependent on staying healthy, right? Especially your pitching. To me, the pitching is what's most exciting about this team because, pitching is what wins. That's what wins late in the season. That's what you can count on. The offense can come and go. You can go through slumps, but the pitching is is what can really keep you being an elite team. So I think, yeah, they definitely, of course, just like last year, I think they've got the opportunity to go all the way. But you can have a great regular season, and it can all fall apart, before you get to Omaha. So it's really hard to make those types of predictions. But I think fans should be just as excited. But I think they got to remember, though, especially Tennessee's players, that you got to prove it again. Like what you did last year doesn't matter. That's done. All the excitement. You're not just going to pick up where you left off because you want to or because you're at Tennessee. You got to go out there and make your own way, and it's got to be a different team. And, it's the 2023 team. 2022 team was fun. 2021 team was fun. But this is a new era, a lot of new faces. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think there's plenty of reason for positivity, without a doubt.
I'm very interested to see how they replace the offensive production because, with this pitching staff, I mean, you're just going to be locked down in those weekend games. At least you should be, largely. And that's really exciting. But obviously, you have to score runs to win games. You have Blake Burke, who was a straight-up firecracker last season and had some really electric moments. But outside of him, I mean, you lost Jordan Beck, you lost Drew Gilbert, you lost Trey Lipscomb, you lost all of these guys that were just really great hitters. And I wanted to make sure that I got all this right. This was from friend of the show, Ben McKee, one of our only two-time guests. But let's see, he said from Ben on 247 today, he said Vitello and his staff at the transfer portal hard. When the window opened up, they added Maui Ahuna from Kansas, Cincinnati outfielder Griffin Merritt, Alabama third baseman Zane Denton, who I believe is a Knoxville native, Charlotte right-hand pitcher Andrew Lindsay, in addition to several key junior college arms that appear poised to factor into the pitching staff this season. The article that Ben wrote was about preseason predictions for Tennessee in the NCAA tournament. It wasn't a prediction for who will win the NCAA tournament, but where teams will end up. Tennessee was projected as the number 2 overall seed and a number 1 seed. And that's obviously really exciting. Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed last season, and that ended sadly in a defeat to Notre Dame. But I think this team, the chemistry is where I wonder what it'll be like, because it was just so magic last season, and they don't have those super fiery dudes like
Beck and Gilbert.
Exactly. But does that almost work in their favor? I wonder that too. Maybe they'll be a little more poised. Maybe they'll be a little more just kind of grounded and focused instead of wanting to bat flip right in your face. I don't know. Or maybe they'll come out in that same way.
I think you're going to see a lot of similarities. I mean, it's going to be a different team, right? I mean, it's different personalities. It'll be a different version of Tennessee baseball, but I think you're going to see a lot of the same kind of bravado and swagger, because it starts with Tony Vitello. I mean, that comes from him. He allows his guys to play that way. If he was at Arkansas coaching, for example, you would see similar antics or whatever you want to call it with the same players. Like, you'd see the same type of swagger, because that comes from the top. It comes with how you manage the team, how you run your roster. It all starts with Tony V. This is the guy that was sitting courtside in an Easy E shirt with a black Tennessee hat that everybody wants to buy now at the Missouri game. He's just got that attitude. Like Josh Heupel, it's very genuine. It doesn't feel forced. He's just being himself, and he lets his players be themselves. So whatever personalities are on this team, I'm sure there'll be some quiet guys, some more louder guys with more swagger, guys that want to bat flip, whatever it is, he's going to let that personality come out of them. So they'll be their own team. We'll have different characters this season, but I think you'll see just them be themselves. And Tony Vitello has shown that he'll allow that.
I hope so. And I mean, knowing Tony, he's going to let them be what they want to be, character-wise. That team last year wanted to be that just over-the-top, bravado-filled team, and maybe this one will also be that. Maybe it won't be. I'm like on pins and needles, though. It's a Friday night, and typically, like, Friday night's a night where I just like to do whatever I want to do and forget about, Tennessee sports don't typically happen on Fridays. Like, just step away. but I'm gonna be tuning in. I'm not missing this because I'm really excited to see what happens with this baseball team.
And there are something else I think is gonna be fun to watch this year, like somebody like Maui Ahuna. Like he's gonna be a future MLB player, most likely. He's got a very marketable name. The NIL deals that he gets, that's going to be interesting to see and how it helps recruiting moving forward. This team's on television, I think 14, like not streamed, like national television 14 times this season. They didn't have that last year. I think as much hype as Tennessee got last year, if they're just as good this year, that's just going to explode. It's going to go to a whole nother level in 2023, and that's going to be really fun to watch.
I think you got to get like a sushi restaurant in Knoxville. It's got to be the Maui Ahuna tuna roll. Something like that. With that name, the possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah.
So it's just really exciting what could happen with that team. But I mean, with Beam and Dolander and that whole pitching staff, you look at the teams that have historically won College World Series. I mean, that's the type of teams that have, like the last one that Vandy won, they had Kumar Rocker and
Jack Leiter.
You know, they just had those transcendent pitchers, and Dolander is, I mean, he's the dude. He's the preseason pitcher of the year nationally, I believe, by whatever service gives that out. And like, you have that kind of prowess on this team, and I hate to put it this way, but it's almost like if you don't win it with teams like this, when are you going to win it? like that's, I hate that, but I think it also holds true. It's like, the baseball is weird. I mean, Ole Miss was certainly not the best team in America last year, and they won. And Mississippi State the year before that wasn't the best team in America, and they won.
Yeah, to me, baseball, like I've said this before, it's about the journey. Like you want to win, of course, but if you don't win, like last year wasn't a failure to me because they didn't make it. Like that didn't erase what happened during that really extremely fun regular season. To me, baseball, yeah, you want to win it, but it's about the journey, the ride to get there, the spring and summer leading up to that, everything that you get to experience, the great moments. That to me is what it's about. You get into that tournament situation or a playoff situation, you just don't know if your pitching's going to hold up. You don't know if guys are going to go into a slump. Another team gets hot, like you mentioned with Ole Miss. Like they weren't the best team in the country last year. They weren't even close to the best team in the country. And just because they won the College World Series doesn't mean they were the best team in the country. It just, the cards fell right for them in that particular month. So that's not what it's about to me. Like I don't feel like you can. There's just so many variables that you can't account for.
Playing right at the right time, but
yeah.
At the same
baseball
time,
is weird. Baseball is just a weird sport in general at times.
It is. At the same time, you only lost 9 games all season last year, so you can be good and just win. You know, there is that. It's maybe a little more of that in college baseball where you can override teams with talent. MLB is pretty, competitive across the board, but we shall see. We'll see what happens when they take the field on Friday night in Arizona, right against Arizona, I believe.
Yeah, and they're
Glendale,
Scottsdale. I think they're in different locations for each game in Arizona. We'll say Eric does make a point here that I guess I need to mention. He says last year the media was calling them the best team in college baseball history, so it was pretty disappointing when you don't win it all. When you put it like that, yeah, that is, you can't be the best team in college baseball history and then not make it, not win it all. So that, yeah, I can see that aspect of it. And in that situation, I guess with so much hype and the way that they went on that streak of not losing the series, yeah, I guess you could call it a little bit of a disappointment.
That is pretty much what I would say about it. It's extremely fun, but at the end of the day, it was a disappointment. Yeah, Mr. Jones says in the comments there, peak too soon. Yeah, that's the right way to say it. And we'll end the show on this beautiful Monday. It's really nice outside here in Knoxville. You found an article, Zach, that was about coaches that are potentially college football coaches that are potentially either on the hot seat coming up or on the docket for retirement. And some of the names mentioned there are pretty interesting. So we'll talk about that to end the show right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Our final great sponsor for the show today. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been helping Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some have stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fphp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fphp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Thanks to them. Thanks to all the sponsors today, helping the show out, supporting the boys. Now, Zach, who are some of the names on this list that folks watching this show might find notable?
Yeah, so this is from ESPN's Adam Rittenberger, and it's a hot seat and retirement watch. And so he doesn't have anybody on the hot seat yet in the SEC, but he's got a few names to keep an eye on. Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, which I think we all kind of would assume, even with that big buyout, which I assume would lessen a little bit going into next season. I mean, you're getting paid that much. You gotta win 8, 9 games, 10 games a year at the least. Elijah Drinkwitz from Missouri, obviously, even though he just received that extension, I don't think he's won more than 6 games in a season yet down there at Missouri. I don't think you want to pay a dude $5 million or whatever he's getting paid to win 6 games a year at most. And then Billy Napier at Florida, Rittenberger mentions that it's like, hey, if he doesn't think he's on the hot seat, doesn't get to a bowl game though in year 2, maybe people in Gainesville with all that's going on in the NIL stuff, they get a little restless. Decide, they moved on quick from Dan Mullen. I imagine they would do the same with Billy Napier. I don't think he's got any equity at all in Gainesville, so he could be one that's quickly out the door if things don't turn around. I hope he stays just good enough to not get fired if he's going to stay on this path. But then the big one, of course, they put Nick Saban on retirement watch, and there are no inside sources on this, but Rittenberger is, he's a guy that's been around. Like, he's a pretty popular football reporter. Yeah. And he suggested, hey, if Saban can get one more national title, if he can get past Georgia that one last time with all the changes in the NIL and transfer portal, you're seeing a lot of the older coaches. We've already seen it in college basketball a lot. Guys kind of like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. He's Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Coach K. He's Nick Saban. If he gets that one last championship, could go that same path. He's in his 70s. He's 72. It's going to happen eventually. Maybe it doesn't happen for another 10 years. I don't know, but I don't see him coaching when he's 80. No. I don't think he'll coach that long at all. And I think it'll be a very you remember like when Bob Stoops retired, it was very sudden. He kind of had his succession plan in place. I think that's what you'll see with Alabama. And I don't know who that person will be. And don't laugh at it, but it wouldn't shock me if next season, I don't think he's going to retire after this season. I really don't. He's going to bring Jeremy Pruitt back to Tuscaloosa eventually. He tried this offseason. I mean, that's his right-hand guy outside of Kirby Smart. Did Pruitt learn enough from his time at Tennessee to be trusted with that? I mean, I know it sounds silly just based on what happened at Tennessee, but Nick Saban's already been there at Alabama. He can continue on in that Nick Saban way if that's his. He's gonna leave it to somebody. I don't think Nick Saban's gonna retire and say, "Hey, y'all find a new coach. I'm out." I don't think that's gonna happen, and I don't think it'll be Lane Kiffin either. I don't think it'll be Lane Kiffin because he's just not dependable to stay in one place and to be consistent, and he really hasn't done that much either. He's had a pretty good year at Ole Miss, but that's about it.
There really is not, like, if he were to retire this season at the moment, or if he were to have retired just now, like just after this past season, there's not a guy that I look to and go, oh yeah, that's the natural successor to Saban, even on his own staff or in his coaching tree. Who would it be? Derek Dooley. Bring in Derek Dooley.
He did interview Derek Dooley for his offensive coordinator position before he hired Tommy Rees. He's at Alabama as an analyst, so it wasn't like anything crazy. But I don't think Kiffin would even want the job. As much as he targets these jobs and the Auburn deal, I think even Kiffin knows that nobody wants to follow Nick Saban at Alabama. You're going to be the guy before the guy at best. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be like a Lincoln Riley situation where you're able to just pick up right where, Bob Stoops left off. And really, Riley did better than Bob Stoops did those last few years. I'm with you. I don't know who it would be. There are no clear answers.
I mean,
None at all.
Yeah, it'll be Holly Warlick following Pat Summitt. It will be,
Yeah.
Hubert Davis following Roy Williams. Like, it'll be an extremely tough job. So I'm not sure where they go. They're gonna have to pay out the absolute butt. I can tell you that. Like, whoever, if it's Dabo or whoever they,
Dabo's
go
like
for both
the one person I think that would be connected to it, obviously, because he, played Alabama. But he been at Clemson so long. He spent way more time in Clemson, South Carolina than he has in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in his life. He's way more connected in Clemson. He has way more. His roots are at Clemson. They're not really at Alabama. So do you want to give that up to go follow Nick Saban at Alabama, knowing that you've got to rebuild the culture? Because the culture at Alabama now is not the culture at Clemson. Two completely different things. Dabo is not the Nick Saban way. He's not a Nick Saban guy. He was never at Alabama when Nick Saban was there. So it's a completely different philosophy. I would think Alabama would want to go with somebody that's kind of been in that Nick Saban way. I don't know. It
will be fascinating when that day finally comes. It'll be fascinating to see where they go. Because Lord knows, I mean, it really has been the last few years, just Titans finally stepping away, like you said, Roy Williams, all of those guys, finally going away. And
like, how long can you keep that up if you're 70 some years old? You have no time off, essentially. You're recruiting your own roster, in addition to high school kids, in addition to the portal, dealing with all the staff turnover. He's got 2 new coordinators this year, a couple of new assistants. He's having to go through that every single offseason. At some point, it's not, and you're not winning championships anymore like you were. I mean, I know he still won one in, the COVID year, but obviously he looked like he slipped. I mean, he lost to Tennessee for the first time since 2006. I mean, things aren't going in the right direction at Alabama. I'm not saying they're about to fall off the face of the earth. I mean, they might go 12-0 this year. I have no idea. They have a really good class coming in. But everybody's kind of catching up to him. I don't know how much longer he can keep on with that.
Here's the way that I need him to go out. He announces his retirement prior to the season, like Coach K did. And then they do the farewell tour. He comes to Knoxville, so maybe the year after this one.
2024.
And instead of giving him a tribute, we all boo him and throw things at him. And then we beat him. And obviously Tennessee beats him that year. Then we play Alabama in the SEC championship game, and you beat Saban then too, and then Tennessee wins the national championship, and that's the perfect final season for Nick Saban.
So you just describe what UNC almost did to Coach K.
That's exactly, yes. I said that at that time. Think about if you were UNC, where you would just forever, you would have that over them in perpetuity for the rest of time.
They probably feel like they won the championship last year when they beat Duke in the Final Four. Who cares what happens in the Kansas game? They beat Duke in the Final Four.
You beat Duke in the Final Four. Beat Duke. Was it at Cameron on his final game?
It was his last home game.
I mean, come on. That would be so amazing. But
that would be even better if you beat him in Tuscaloosa.
God, that would be incredible. So hopefully that does happen and the dream can be fulfilled. We'll see. I think that's it for today's show. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Right down below us, that's all of the great sponsors that have gotten on board here with the show. Thank you to all of them, and especially thank you to every single person that watches this show. You guys are too good to us, too awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in and commenting and hanging out. It's been excellent as always. Zach, anything else for the folks at home before we bounce?
I think that's about it. Let's see how this Alabama game goes Wednesday night. Maybe we'll have a reason for some more positivity at the end of the week.
That would be nice. Maybe, like I said, if Tennessee wins, maybe on Thursday we'll do a quick segment.
Oh yeah, we got to.
Is Tennessee turning the corner? All right, yeah, that's it. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. You're this far into it. You know where to find us on all of this stuff. Go subscribe, rate, review, blah, 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 blah. And we will talk to y'all maybe later this week, maybe next week.
See you guys later.